Hello and namaste to all of you. Today in our audio 6, we are doing Unit 4 Issues and Challenges in our of series of the Sustainable Development Issues and Challenges. In previous audio, we have discussed number 1 Introduction of Issues and Challenges, Sustainable Economic Growth, Achieving Sustainable Livelihood. But in this audio number 6, we will discuss the living in harmony with nature and summary of the Unit 4 Issues and Challenges of Sustainable Development. Now we will begin point 4 of this Unit 4, living in harmony with nature. The Stockholm Declaration of 1972 suggested that man is both creature and molder of his environment, which gives him physical sustenance and affords him the opportunity for intellectual, moral, social, and spiritual growth. In the long and tortuous evolution of the human race on this planet, a stage has been reached when, through the rapid acceleration of science and technology, man has acquired the power to transform his environment in countless ways and on an unprecedented scale. Both aspects of man's environment, the natural and the man made, are essential to his well being and to the enjoyment of basic human rights, even the right to life itself. 30 years after the Stockholm Conference, it is still not possible to describe the state of world environment comprehensively or to say with confidence that national governments have the will or the knowledge to harmonize development policies with sound environmental policies. Problems and challenges in this context are: number 1, problem of accounting environmental losses. Authoritative studies to reveal the economic costs of damage caused by environmental pollution are not available, although since the mid 80s many such studies have attempted to reveal the costs. For example, costs of damage to health of society, historic monuments, and biological systems. The economic cost of pollution and global warming include the cost that nations would have to bear due to the impact of sea level rise, such as the cost to deal with the migration of coastal area population as ecological refugees. Some studies estimate the cost of pollution abatement and control in the developed countries at 0.8 to 1.5% of annual GDP, a figure much lower in developing countries. Following this, in the past 2 decades, some attempts have also been made to adjust national income accounts to register both the direct cost inflicted by environmental degradation and the depreciation of natural resources capital to allow for losses in future production potential. Although the national accounts record the income earned earned from harvesting resource stocks such as fish, timber, and minerals, the loss of future income through declining resource stocks and deteriorating environmental quality is excluded. When such depreciations are included into natural capital stock, the net contributions of resource degradation to national income are much lower and more accurately reflect the impact on economic reforms. Take, for example, Japan, which attempted to correct its gross national product (GNP) for many factors, including environmental. It was found that instead of the GNP growing by a factor of 8.3% per year between 1955 and 1985, it grew by an average of only 5.8% per year. Similarly, if the physical depletion and petroleum price increase, forest, soil, and water assets are taken into consideration, most of the developed and developing countries face a sharp drop in their GNP ratings. However, accounting for the loss of stock resources is complex and remains a contested debate in international politics. The task of adjusting national accounts becomes a political task when no national government likes to reveal the drop in its GNP rise. Number two, problem of fixing responsibilities and making them pay. The global balance of environmental use suggests a redistribution of monetary resources to the poor countries to improve their human capital by investing in health, education, and nutrition. This presently is a major battle in the economic and the environmental forums. It demands a change in the lifestyles of the rich nations and a reduction in their consumption patterns. Because the environment has been treated as a free resource, the rich nations have taken advantage of this to emit most of the world's population. It has been suggested that the environment be correctly priced and tradable permits were issued to all nations, 50% on the basis of GDP and 50% on the basis of population. If this was done, then it has been estimated that the rich nations might have to transfer as much as 5% of their combined GDP to the poor nations to buy environment permits from them. The Human Development Report suggests that the developing countries are a home to world's tropical forests, and it is in everyone's interest to preserve them to counter global warming and preserve biodiversity. Similarly, protection of the ozone layer demands global restraint in the production of CFCs. The industrial countries have been responsible for most of its production, and the issue of transfer of this polluting technology to the developing countries should be prevented. This would be possible only if the poor countries are duly compensated and helped in investing into alternative technology. A corollary to this principle is that countries which pollute atmosphere should be charged for such irresponsibility or revoking the polluter pays principle. This could be the basis for an international market for tradable permits for various forms of pollution. This should be treated as a payment for services by the rich nations and not as an aid to the poor countries. Number 3, efficacy and authority of international legal system in solving environmental conflicts. Like most national societies, even the international societies allocate rights of access to and control of resources through certain rules broadly analogous to property rules. In international law, these property concepts are treated in terms of national sovereignty, territorial rights, or jurisdictions. While international law recognizes the right of a nation to exercise jurisdiction within its territory. It may not allow so outside it because the concept of sovereignty and jurisdiction over resources involves the right to exclude others from access to its use. It has become a very debatable issue in international law. The 1973 oil embargo by Arab states is one such manifestation of this exclusive right right possessed by a nation. In contrast, in contrast to this is the principle of common access to natural resources such as the freedom of the high seas. This is now severely modified to exclude the exclusive economic zones. The debate raises labyrinthine issues. The question arises about the fairness of the international rules. How equitable or rational are the basic assumptions upon which the international system currently distributes resources? It is not only a question of protecting the resources directly being affected, but also regulating the international investment system. For example, through FDI made by the transnational companies in the natural resources sector such as mining, fishing and timber logging etc. In the past decade, at least two important cases have been decided by the International Court of Justice in favor of India and Pakistan, who were the petitioners against the United States of America (USA) for the protection of their coastal fisheries. The the signing negotiations of the Climate Change Convention or Kyoto Protocol and the Biodiversity Convention expose the myth of interdependence and reveal the use of the dominance theory by the USA and other developed nations. Number 4. The ever growing population. Paul Ehrlich, in his book The Population Bomb 1969, had given a threatening description of the population growth which was reminiscent, reminiscent of Thomas Malthus' prediction in the late 18th century that the growth in human numbers would outstrip the growth in food supply and this would lead to poverty and hunger. The conventional school, which is mainly Western in origin, treats population growth as the main contributor to environmental degradation, but another school, mainly emerging out of India, treats the growth of population as irrelevant to this debate. The Center for Science and Environment, in its second Citizens Report 1982, has claimed that it is the careless mismanagement of countries' natural resources that is responsible for hunger and poverty in India. The Human Development Report of 1995 has shown that developmental policy of increasing education and employment of women has brought a sharp fall in the population growth of some Southeast Asian countries. Therefore, population growth is a consequence of imbalanced and non-sustainable development rather than its cause. Number 5. Appropriate or alternate technology. Appropriate technology is designed with the purpose to meet a need and a community objective. The purpose is generally development without restriction. Technology is Technology is appropriate when it is in harmony with the objectives and patterns of development. Most existing technologies in, ind- in industrially in industrially in industrially advanced countries are capital intensive as well as resource capital intensive. Appropriate technology presents an alternative to such technology. It is one of the best manifestations of attempts at living in harmony with nature. The following conditions are needed for a technology to be appropriate. Number one, relevance to the factor endowments of the nation. Number two, optimum utilization of natural and human resources. Number three, maximization of output of basic consumption, goods and services, and of the rate of growth. Number four, reduction of balance of payments, deficits, and unemployment. Number five, greater equity in distribution of income. Number six, improvement in quality of life. Number seven, promotion of political development and stability. Number eight, contribution to regional development. Number nine, ability to solve or avoid environmental problems. Number 10, relevance to cultural environment and social tradition. The technological strand the technological strand of environmental movement strives for a working synthesis of agriculture and industry. Big and small units and western and eastern or modern and traditional respectively. Technological and production traditions, it is a promising sector for solving the problem of entrepreneurship entrepreneurship in rural areas and preventing the marginalization or elimination of traditional handicraft worker or a cottage industry due to expanding transnational and capital resource intensive technology. Gandhiji's Charkha and Khadi Udyog are the prime examples of appropriate technology that also promoted political development, namely to fight subservience to a foreign rule. Last point, summary of the issues and challenges, Unit 4. In sustainable development, issues and challenges. Problems of sustainable development are rooted in issues of resources use and their pattern of distribution and ownership. Thus, a policy towards sustainable development cannot be framed in isolation to politics and state regulations. The world community is confronted by a chicken and egg controversy. Economic problems aggravate resources crisis and environmental dis- dispoliation despoliation, and this leads to constrained economic revival, due to which nations find it more difficult to solve problems of unsustainable use of environment in a world where progress depends on a complex set of national and international economic ties. Any step towards sustainable patterns of growth involves as yet unresolved problems and challenges. In the 1970s, the debate on development was safely polarized between the issues of environment and development. This decade saw a major revision in the thought of development itself, and that has presented a major challenge to the conventional consensus on economic development. New expressions such as sustainable development have added new dimension to development debates. The problem today is not primarily one of absolute physical shortage, but of economic and social maldistribution and misuse. Thus, United Nations Environment Programme (UNEP) 1975 explains environmental management implies sustainable development. Since then, the challenge as expressed in the Brundtland report also as the process of economic development, which must be more soundly based on the stock of capital that sustains it. Issues, issues of sustainable development, have become center stage to economic debates and are now setting the pattern of economic growth and world trade. The conventional agenda of the transnational businesses is found to be inadequate for sustainable development programs of developing and transitional countries, and international institutions are required to implement inter and intra-generational equity and justice in trade pacts. The challenge of changing lifestyles and mode of production would require a technological change towards a just order. Economic growth cannot be translated into economic well-being till distribution of costs and benefits of both financial and natural resources in economic policies is accounted for. It has been found that the costs of development are generally borne by the poor and subsistence community, but the benefits are always falling into the pockets of the rich. This is also translated into international relations where the poor countries over-extract their resources to meet the requirements of the international market under the pressure of debt and and amortization payments amortization payments, leaving them with no choice but to abuse their environmental resources in an unsustainable manner. Thus, the primary requirement of sustainable economic prosperity in the world is to make the environmental economic system more equitable, and just so that the developing countries can access it more vibrantly. It would also need a firm action towards debt servicing so that the poor countries may come may come out of the debt trap and participate in the world economic recovery programs. Success of sustainable development is dependent upon the capacity development of the developing countries and environmental management. The main purpose of this program would be to establish better management practices for both the human and the natural resources through innovations in technology, social policies, political and cultural paradigms. Unit 5, Natural Resources Exploitation. Under this unit, the structure is number 1, Introduction, number 2, Historical perspective and stages of development, number 3, sector-wise parameters of sustainable development. Under this point 3, 3.1 is agriculture, 3.2 is industry, 3.3 is service. Point number 4, defense and armament. Point number 5, quest for comfort. Under this, 5.1 is lifestyle and consumerism. Now 5.2 is energy. And at the last, the summary of the whole unit 5, natural resource exploitation. Point 1, Introduction. The socio-economic is the socio-economic strength of a society can be determined by the quantum and quality of available natural and human resources and the capabilities for its optimal utilization. The basic challenge for attaining such strength lies in science and technological innovation and economic determinism on the one hand and the limitations imposed by our ecological systems on the other. The development process in all its dimensions should expand within the ecosystems, cautiously balancing the environmental constraints and economic activities for its short term as well as long term implications. In this endeavor, an integrated approach projecting intersectoral complementar- complementarities com- intersectoral complementarities is required in our development strategy rather than an exclusive sectoral growth approach. Sustainable development and poverty reduction depend on the protection and sustainable management of our common property resources, including forests, biodiversity, and water resources. Improved management of these natural resources is key to achieving sustainable development. The poor, especially in rural areas, heavily depend on the productivity and environmental services of these natural resources for the livelihoods and quality of life. While economic development has led to dramatic improvements in the quality of life in developing countries, gains have been unevenly distributed, and a large part of the world's population remains extremely poor. At the same time, environmental degradation and loss of natural assets with resulting health costs and productivity losses have offset the benefits of economic growth and have damaged critical life support systems. The need for sustainable development is evident from the following global statistics. Number one, there will be 2 billion more people on the planet over the next quarter of a country. Nearly two-thirds of the world's population living in water scarce or water stressed areas by 2025. Number two, food production needs to double over the next 40 years at a time when almost 23% of the world's agricultural land has been degraded. Number three, almost 12 million hectares of forest are lost each year. There has been overexploitation and decline of more than 60% of the world's marine fisheries. Number 4. Small island nations are threatened with annihilation from rising sea levels due to climate change. In both rural rural and urban areas, the poor and marginalized are often the least able to protect themselves from natural resource degradation, disasters, and environmental health threats, including pollution. 1.5 billion people still do not have access to safe drinking water or adequate sanitary facilities. Unsafe drinking water, health damages from air pollution, vector-borne diseases, and other environmental factors account for more than 25% of the mortality and morbidity among the poor in the developing world. People in developing countries are increasingly concerned about their environment and especially the impacts of pollution and natural resource degradation on their health and prospects of sustainable livelihoods. Environmental factors impose considerable human, economic, and social costs in many developing countries, threatening the foundation for sustained improvements in living standards. The economic costs of environmental degradation have been estimated at 4 to 8% of gross domestic product (GDP) annually in many developing countries. As the United Nations Environmental Programme's UNEP 2000 report points out, the time for a rational, well-planned transition to a sustainable system is running out fast, yet we continue to adopt a business as usual approach to decision making in all the three main sectors of economic development, that is in the agriculture, industry, and service sectors, thereby increasing the chance that our global systems will crack and begin to crumble. The stages of development moving from primarily agriculture to the present combination of agriculture, industry, and service sectors enables one to understand the changing pattern of exploitation of natural resources. Point number two, historical perspective and stages of development. Until about 8,000 years ago, people were foragers of wild food. Some specialized in hunting, in fishing along coasts or in lakes or rivers, while others depended on seeds and fruits. By about 8000 BC, the people had settled to agricultural mode of life. With the advent of copper, bronze, and iron age, efficient tools were manufactured and the economy developed. Trade in goods like cotton, spices, and other flourished. With the development of the mm, maritime trade, the realm of world commerce expanded. The ushering, in the industrial revolution brought with it tremendous advances in manufacturing process of goods that led to the exploration of markets and procurement of natural resources through colonization. The process of industrialization, with increasing emphasis on rapid manufacturing of large quantities of products, mass production, used, used in an area used in an era of reckless exploitation of the natural resources. The same industrialization approach was taken up by the colonies that subsequently became independent developing states. The culture of mass production affected even the agriculture sector, increasing per hectare yield, becoming the prime objective irrespective of the short and long term damage to soil productivity and land degradation. Along with mass production, the pattern of exchange of goods changed. Monetary system for exchange of goods evolved and the service sector became a growing and distinct part of economy. This trajectory of development has been rapidly consuming natural resources. If the entire developing world were to adopt this unsustainable model of development and reach the production and consumption levels of the developed world, the result would be catastrophic and may even make this planet an inhospitable and uninhabit and un and uninhabitable place for man and his future generations. In our next audio number 6, we will discuss the point 3 of unit 5, sector wise parameters of sustainable development. Okay, thank you.